Now, today I want to talk about gender relationships and gender abuse, because this is a matter that has become very current. It's a reality of stuff that is going on around us in the world. In the Daily Nation of June 15th, I remember reading an article, and it said, the article's title was, "Are we ready for the Me Too campaign?" And when we think about the Me Too, it was a huge thing that was going on in the whole world, and it was really about gender and the workplace and how people are relating and what is going on there. There is harassment that is happening. Some of it is perceived, some of it is very real. Some of it was going to the extent of actually stuff that is even criminal. So there are other things that go on within our workplaces and everywhere else. We have biases that affect performance, that affect promotions for people in the workplace. When we think about this particular article was raising this issue because somehow the Me Too campaign had not become such a big thing in Kenya. But it was really, really big in the West. And any of you who have been reading the stuff that has been going on, it has brought down a number of careers of people that seem to be outstanding. They are performers, people in ministry, people in business, and in different places. People who became careless. Some people were not just careless. In some cases, they went all the way to criminal in the abuse of power and in the misuse of people in the opposite gender. Now, it was mostly women that were crying out and telling their stories of harassment and abuse, but there were also a few men that were raising this particular issue. So the question, would arise, it didn't hit big in Kenya, but is it relevant? I think it is. I think that this is an issue that, even though it is not spoken about perhaps as loudly here, it is very real in people's lives, in what is going on around us. There's a reality in our world today that was not true in the past. We have a reality that our two genders are now being mixed in situations that are very new. Before, by the way, in the old days, men and women would only really be together in the home setting. In the shamba, in the house, and places like that. And therefore that meant that you were family. You were being family together. But things have changed. And now, we have jobs and we have workplaces, and that's where people go to earn a living. And so hours and hours are spent together with other people who are not your family, who are not your spouse, but they are of the opposite gender, and you're spending the whole day together. You've got joint purposes, joint goals, things that you want to achieve together. Sometimes you're even put together in transport to go from one meeting to another, and you're going together. And there is a proximity that is being brought about that accentuates the differences and also the attractions and the possibilities of trouble happening in that situation. Almost every workplace we have people of the opposite gender that we are working together. Another thing that happens, of course, because when we are together so much, there's so many misunderstandings. We are different. As much as we try to pretend, in a sense, there's a trying to be, we say we are equal and then we want to say we are just the same. We know we are not the same. We are not the same. And the genders have inherent differences, and it's not just the way we look. It's the way we interact with each other and the things that we do. And these things can easily bring about misunderstandings and actually result in real trouble happening within the community, within people's lives. Now, there's a process that we need when we are thinking about this particular thing and the changes that are happening, the improvements that are happening around us in the world. And I think, one place that we start often is to start with a process of understanding the background. You understand, why is it that this situation is the way we see it? Why is it that there is these problems and where they start off? But then there is also the need for us to confront what is happening, to recognize evil for what it is, and to turn from it and do what God wants us to do. My own tendency is to be that type of person that will focus on understanding the why. Looking and digging up, and finding out what are the real motivations and the things that are going on. And that's because I believe it's important. It helps us to dig out and really understand the issues and help the change to happen, so that it's not just change, that comes for a moment and disappears, but it's real change that is deep, because we've dealt with the roots. In truth, actually, as I was preparing for this sermon, I did a lot of research, and I've gotten a lot of good thoughts about all the cultural backgrounds, both in Africa and in the West, and in different situations, to understand our current circumstances and what brought them to be. But there is need sometimes when we need to deal with issues straight up. We just need to deal with those issues straight up. We need to just hit that tree, cut it off, and not panic so much and worry so much about the root that is causing a problem. Don't pussyfoot too much about those things. And there are big issues around this particular thing. We see rape happening. That's loud. We see incest happening. That's really loud. It's out there. It's obvious. It's criminal. And some of it is, of course, caused by stuff that came up from our backgrounds. We just need to deal with it. Some of it we just must deal with. There are other things that are not so obvious to many people, but they are just as real, and they injure people for long times. In fact, they set up that person's life and mess it up for their lifetime. The other day I was reading an article, a blog written by Jill Monaco, who is now a leader of Christian ministry, a really major leader, but was once a victim of sexual abuse. Where? In church. And from no less a person than her senior pastor. It's a horrendous thing. She was a worship leader employed by the church, and one day after doing some practice, the senior pastor calls her into his office to discuss purportedly a meeting that was to happen that particular Sunday, and he starts to make conversation, and then he becomes starts talking about personal things and is asking personal questions. And this is what she says. She says, "I saw him like a big brother and thought he was about to say that he was praying for me. Then he said, I felt a chemistry between us. I froze. Nothing moved except for the tears that ran down my face. He asked why I was crying, and I told him, because I don't feel the same way. I'd been around long enough to know when a man was hitting on me. Before I was saved, I had to deal with a lot of inappropriate behavior from men. Back then I knew how to slap a face or act like it didn't happen, but I never expected it from a man who preached the gospel every Sunday. I don't know why I didn't just get up and walk out. I wish I would have." This is what she's saying. He went on to say things like, "I've thought about it if we were both single. Would we date? Yes, I think I would. I think we would." Or he'd say, he said, I've always wanted to be with someone with brown eyes like you. Or, whenever I watch you lead worship, and ... Wow. This lady, it talks more about that particular thing, but she, but I think you get the gist of what was going on. Now, she had the courage to bring this matter out within a few days. She wasn't able to do it immediately, but a few days later, she was able to bring it out. And thankfully, and it's thankfully for ladies in general, we have a God who is truly mighty to protect and to provide a way out when there's stuff like this that is going on. When you think about Sarah, he protected Sarah when the person that was supposed to protect her husband, deliberately exposed her to abuse in order to protect himself. Now for Jill, it took a few months of chaos and heartache to go through that experience and come out on the other side, but she did. And of course, as I said, she's now a major Christian leader, and of course that blog is read by many, many people. But she mentions in her blog, she says, out of her experience and just the reality of the things and talking with many women, she says she understands why many women don't come forward when something like this happens. She says, and again using her words, when this happens to you, it is the hardest thing to process. When you've admired a man and he violates your boundaries, it is hard to think clearly about what to do. especially when the list of consequences are so overwhelming and can erupt like an active volcano. You never know what will happen. There is a real chance you could lose everything. There is fear of being fired for saying no, or fear from how the spouse or family members or close friends will respond, or will they believe you at all? You know, when you confront a predator, they get defensive and often they twist the truth. And if they are a person of influence, you are even more concerned about your future because they can ruin your reputation. You can lose friends, relationships, or community. You can lose your security or income. You fear being blamed for doing something to cause what had happened. I could write a whole piece of encouragement to the women about, how God is bigger than this. And of course, I've just mentioned that. But and she says she will talk about that in another post. But then she says something else. She says, sometimes the process of going through confrontation, meetings, and going over the incident again takes a lot of your life. It drains you emotionally and physically. Depending on what is going on, it may be better for the woman and her family to just move on. Now, this is how many people who have gone through this type of abuse find their situations. It's just so difficult to deal with it and to confront it. Why don't men come forward? Because that's also an issue. When we read these things, we read stories of people who are talking about what happened to them when they were young, 20 years later, both men and women. Why don't men come out? Well, in our society, in a sense, a man is expected to be the one always wanting sex, like a machine. Yeah? And so there's this assumption that he should take advantage, a woman, what are you doing? People go to report and the police even will laugh at the guy, because in our history and our circumstances, most of the time, the men are in the power position in gender relations. Even though this has changed. In fact, it is changing really fast. But we assume that a man to whom something like this has been done, we assume that he should just forget about his morals, forget about his conscience, forget about his heart, that it doesn't disturb him. And somehow, it's just brushed away. But in truth, that pain can continue to squash up that person for a long, long time. And we've all read stories about those things. And as we look at this, I do want to say this, that by far the most of the harassment and abuse is perpetrated by us men. All the studies will indicate that more than 80% of reported abuse and stuff is being perpetrated by men. Maybe because we've been in the power seat for so long and it was so easy to get away with it, and that culture has sort of accepted some of the things that were going on, that it's just continued. People, there is a reality out there. There is a reality about people who are suffering, people who are human beings who are feeling oppressed in their world. They're down there and they can't get out. The victim is often blamed. And the perpetrator is given excuses. Of course, mostly because many of the people who are the perpetrators are the ones in power in that situation. They are people that hold power, and that often means that they hold the allegiance of other people. And so, people will back them up. I know that there are many arguments out there about this reason or the other reason, but, evil must stop. We can't allow evil just to continue. No matter what other stuff is going out there, we've got to deal with it. There's a story in the Bible about somebody really powerful who misused his place. How many of us know the story of David and Bathsheba? Yeah, most of us know that story. Not everybody. But David was, sitting up in his palace, and he's looking out. I don't know why he was looking outside and looking down into the city, and he sees a girl who is washing, and he looks, and she's looking attractive, and so he sends for her, and she is brought to him in the palace, and he has his way with her, and then sends her back home. Now, there are times when you read this, and I've actually, seen many opinions. Maybe it's the opinion that maybe you've had. There are many times the opinions have been, Bathsheba must have done something, isn't it? Why was she washing in a place where he could see her? But let's remember that David is in a palace. He's overlooking the whole town. And this would not have been in a place, a woman would not have been washing in a place that was open for everybody else. And so she had perhaps looked for a place which was not open to everybody else. But David, being able to see more than most people could from his vantage, was able to see her. It's so easy to point the finger at her, but when you read that story, you realize that in the end, even when God confronts David, he doesn't pass the blame at all. The blame falls squarely on David. And it's a thing for us to remember that, God sees all this that is going on, and he knows who the guilty party is. And he deals with it as he dealt with David. But we'll come back to that towards the end. Now, what I want us to begin looking at is a godly way that we can relate with other genders, whether it is at home or the workplace, and it deals with everything. In fact, from the very minor offenses to the largest ones. If we follow God's path, God's pattern, then we will always get it right. We will fall in the right place. And our key passage today is Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 to 31. Genesis 1, 27 to 31. Now, I'd like us to read this together. Yeah? To read this together. So can we start together? So, God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds on the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the sixth day. Now this is God's evaluation. This is before any sin has happened. Yeah? And did you notice all those things of them and whatever? It's not a man's world, is it? When you read what God has said and how this is saying it, it's not a man's world. It is a world for both male and female. Men don't have to try to become women in the home to make a contribution. And neither do women need to try to become men in the workplace. Both genders are part of the mandate to multiply and to produce the increase and perpetuate the generations that are to come. Both genders are given the mandate to subdue the earth and to draw fruit from out of the earth. Both are given that permission to enjoy that fruit that is produced as the earth is productive. And yes, God made us different too. There is male and female. And so there are just three words in a sense that capture this thought here concerning our relationships. One is equality, the second is mutuality, and the third is complementarity. The first thing we see in this passage is the idea of equality before God. Both men and women are created in God's image. Each of us is made in the image of God, and that should be the first thing that enters our minds as we interact with other people, as we walk, together with other people of other genders. That should be the thing in our heart. That, as a man, when we deal with a woman, whether it's in the home, it's in the workplace, or in a social setting, it is God's image bearer that I am interacting with. She is not an object to be used or misused. There is something that reflects God in her. In fact, we would never be able to see the fullness of the image of God without both male and female. That comes out very clearly in this passage. So, you need to stop and ask yourself, can you see it? Can you see God's reflection in her? If you can't, look for it. Ask God for it, because it's there. It's there. So treat that woman with respect and with honor. Whether they are rich or they are poor, whether they have earned their status or they've, gained it through relationship, she bears the image of God. And not just when you're attracted to her. That's not the only time that she should be treated that way. Women, when you deal with a man, from the shamba boy to the boss to the father and the husband and your son, treat him with honor and respect. He bears the image of God. There is something that reflects God in him. Can you see it? Can you see it? Because if you can't, look for it and ask God about it. It's there. It's there. And remember that you are made in the image of God. You are not a dog, you are not a cat, you are an image bearer, and it's God's image that you bear. So whether you're a man or a woman, carry yourself with dignity, with honor, and with respect, because you carry the image of God. So don't drag it around on the floor. You are an image bearer. When we think about this, the number one thing is that, we are equally image bearers, and we must treat with respect and honor the God who is reflected in each person and across the genders. One of the things that really helps us to shift our minds from the externals to the internals and to that person is just, that focus on character. Focus on who this person is. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, the writer writes, and he's speaking, Peter is speaking to women, and he says, don't focus just on the external beauty that might be, so attractive, so wonderful. You must focus also on the inside. That is what is going on the inside. And that is a principle for everybody. Because even when he's looking for a king, what does God say about a person? He says, God looks at the heart. He is looking at the inside. He's not looking at just the externals. People, when you look at people just on the basis of externals, it's so easy to objectify them, to treat them as though they were objects. An object is not a person that has feelings and sensitivities, who is just like you. An object is something that you can use and abuse. It dehumanizes the people, and it then becomes a prelude to treating them badly, and you can misuse them because they are just an object. That's how all sorts of mistreatment begins. In fact, even the atrocities, murders, and even the genocides, they start like this. By looking first at somebody, starting to talk about that group and painting a picture of them as, a negative type of group, stereotyping them. Then we start looking at them as though they were animals, and then we can treat them like animals, as though they were not our fellow human beings. And is that a way that sometimes we deal across our genders? We stereotype, and we paint people in a particular way, and then it becomes very easy to use them and abuse them. We're not relating to them as image bearers of God. For example, when you think about the realities of who people are, women feel better, they feel more confident when they dressed well and they're smelling nice. Am I right? They really are, they feel better. But it's not an invitation. Doing that is not an invitation. Now, of course, on the other hand, ladies, you also know, you need to be aware that men are sexually turned on by the physical more than the psychological. So you just need to be aware. I'm not condemning anything on this, but the way you present yourself may bring out this objectification more than other things. But this doesn't take away, guys, the guilt. The guilt of doing what is wrong. When you look at somebody and start looking at them as an object, you are sinning against God. And you must change that. That is an attitude that is completely contrary to God. Then the man who is in charge, is the one who is most sexually attractive. That tends to be the reality. When a guy is there, he's got this or the other. But is that an excuse to treat him as an object to get what you want? It's not. The fact that this person has been able to do these things, is it an excuse for him to use his power to do what he wants? No, it's not. We are image bearers of God. We are equal before God as carrying the image of God. We are equally called to the task of multiplication. It's something we do together. We are equally called to the task of stewardship. We are created male and female. And for us as Christians, of course, as we come into the New Testament, it's even louder when it speaks to us. In Galatians 3:28, it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor female, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. There is a unity and in that equality that is so deep. For us as Christians, it should just be a no-brainer. When Jesus was speaking about something like this, he was asked about, a woman who was a serial widow. She was a widow of 6 or 7 brothers. And they asked, so whose wife is she going to be? And he says, come on, you guys just don't seem to understand. When we are in heaven, it'll be like the angels. It's not about gender. That will not be the thing. That's a thing that we enjoy and live with when we are in this world. But when we come to the end, it is all, in terms of it's who we are before God. So no matter how you look at it, God is saying that we are equal. Each person is equal. The second thing is mutuality. Both of us have the same purposes. We are members of the same team. The mandate has been given by God. And he's calling us to do certain things. That mandate requires both men and women. Whether it's the mandate to multiply or the mandate for stewardship. Both of us are required. There's a mutuality. We might be bringing different gifts, but the goal is the same. And so we are working towards the same goal and seeking to fulfill these things. And that works best when we work as a team. There is a mutuality. When you start having a conflict and putting one person down, people have said many times, when we keep, half the workforce underemployed, underutilized, we are affecting ourselves. We are unable to produce at the best that we can. Everybody needs to be part of making this work. It's a mutuality. And when we come together, we are able to meet the goals of an organization in that smaller sense, but of God's call to us as a whole people, even forever and ever. It is a huge thing. We need to do it together. Then there is, of course, complementarity. That's the third thing. Complementary and not competition. It's not competition. We are different, and that's a fact. But those differences are God-given so that He can make us more effective together. That is true whether we are talking about individual members of a family or entire genders. God has a purpose for us in His team. Then our differences are for use for the betterment of the team. It is not for competing and seeing who is better than the other. When people are different, we don't reject them. We don't look at them in competition. We accommodate them. We accept them. That's the call that we have. We are told we also to treat people according to understanding. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, speaking to the person who was in a power relationship in their setting, and very much present even in the present day, Peter writes and he says, husbands, in the same way be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect, as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. And God is saying, and by the way, ladies, if you are in a power relationship, He's speaking this to you as well. That He is on the side of that weaker partner who is going to be an heir with you of the gracious gift of life. And He's telling this husband at this point, He says, I won't listen to your prayers if you treat people in the wrong way. Don't misuse your power, but rather work on the basis of understanding. And there's some great stuff that you can find on the internet in terms of just helping us understand the differences between us as male and female, whether it's for the workplace, in the home. There's so much that we can learn and gain from when we work together with understanding. For example, on the area of communication, Communication is so different between the two genders, so different. And there are different strategies for us to use. When I'm one gender, if I understand the other gender a little bit better, I'll be better. In the communication strategy, there's one source that I found. Unfortunately, I sort of clicked a button here and there, and I couldn't get back where I got it from. But it talks about communication strategies for women. And it says, if you're a woman, being aware of the conversation styles of your male counterparts will give you insight and help improve the effectiveness of communication. So recognize, guys, in this, communication, when it's men communicating in the workplace. Why do men communicate in the workplace? The value is found in achieving results. They don't just communicate just for anything. It's achieving results. Asking for help is like admitting a lack of ability. Focus for them many times is statistics. And then, they want to solve the problem the right way. This is what communication means for them. So women need to understand that, when you're talking with men, you need to get to the bottom line very quickly. If you start talking long stories, the guy is going to switch off, and they'll be wondering what's going on. Women have to remember that men aren't going to talk until they have the facts, until they know, that this is the right information. And when they talk, they want to be heard. So you better observe and listen. Don't start processing what they're saying out loud. Yeah? Don't just talk it back to them. On the other hand, since you're nurturing as women, it's natural for a woman to offer to help a co-worker or an employee. It's just natural. But to a man, that's viewed as a lack of confidence in his ability. And so wait. And all you do is invite them. If they have a challenge, that they can come and have it solved. You can help them. But, give that assistance and advice when you are asked. On the other hand, for the men, when women are communicating in the workplace, they share experiences to find common ground. They're very interested in relationships, and they want to build a commonality. They build off each other's points. They talk about problems, and they solve them together. Processing is used as a way to build relationships. They place emphasis on communication and feelings, which men don't even understand what those things are. And they offer assistance to be helpful because they care. And so as a man, when a woman is telling a story during a discussion, recognize that she is trying to find common ground with the people that are participating. She's talking it out so that all of us can talk and become part of that relationship and grow together in that thing. She's not just wasting time and beating about the bush. She's trying to build unity and forging relationships together. And by the way, as guys, a woman would appreciate if you offer to help. And so you should offer. To her, it shows that you're supportive. If we practice these things, if we practice learning and understanding each other, we will get the best of both. The relational and all-round perspective strengths of women and the focus and drive of men. All of these things come together, as well as every other complementing characteristic that the two genders have and individuals have. It's when we accept them and we understand and we bring them together. So what are practical to-dos that I'd like you to take home as we finish today? The first one is be more attentive to how you treat the other gender. Just do that. Start there. Be more attentive to how you treat the other gender. Dignity and respect, both of yourself and of others, will help cut down the sexual innuendos that often creep up into our interactions. It helps us to set boundaries and to promote professionalism. It helps us to discuss things in a better way if we are more attentive and we are treating people right. Then secondly, be a correcting influence. When you see people, cutting down others or mistreating or painting whole groups of people in a particular way, in the wrong way, can you be God's light there? The Bible calls us the salt and the light of the world. So Christians, if you are that, remember that He's told you never to hide the light under a bowl. A light is not hidden under a bowl. It is open so that it gives light to people. So when you're in a social setting, and as so often people start talking all sorts of things about the opposite gender, and upcutting remarks are made when you're pointing fingers at people who are, you know who you're ultimately pointing fingers at? You're pointing fingers at God. Does that make you comfortable? It shouldn't. And if you know that it's wrong, then can you be that salt that adjusts the flavor of that conversation so that it honors God? Can you be that light that helps people to see the best way that they should go, that they might have a correct path? Because it's not just harmless fun, it harms people. In James chapter 5 verse 20, it just reinforces this. It says, remember this, whoever turns a sinner from the error of their way will save them from death and cover over a multitude of sins. A multitude of sins. Why would it say a multitude? Because if you correct my opinion, it will affect how I behave from today onwards. And the way that I'd have sinned onwards is just changed from there. You know, it changes how I speak at home, and so it changes the way my son will behave. And that starts to create a new impact. And you know, this is, by the way, this is discipleship. This is how you train people. This is how you call people to make a whole new changed generation, change destinies for everybody. Through, you know, just bringing about that little correction. You cover over a multitude of sins because it has a multiplier effect. Everybody can be affected by correcting just one person. The third thing that I want us to do, there are two number threes in the slides in the projection. And the first one is relating to those people who are predators. If you are a predator, repent. Repent. If you've been using your gender as a means for progression or an excuse for lack of it, you know, if you've been using your position of power in relationship, you know, whether it's physical strength or physical attractiveness or status and financial strength, whether it's emotional strength, you know, if you've been using things to pleasure yourself or to advance yourself, repent. Repent. You know, confess your sin, confront your problem, and bring it to God. You know, David acted as a predator when he seduced Bathsheba. He tried to cover up his adultery, and in the end he murdered, he put to death her husband. Yet you know something, guys? He was restored. When he recognized his sin and confessed it, he was restored. God cares enough about your future that Jesus went to the cross for you. He took your sin. Don't wait until you're exposed, you know, like we've seen in the papers and in all these different things. And don't also think that you're safe so long as nobody has ever seen it. I want to tell you, God sees it. God sees it. And if you see what happened in David's life and his family because of this situation of Bathsheba, you will know that stuff will happen. It really produces bad fruit. Deal with it. Come before God and find your restoration as you confess and change your life. And then the other three is for those people who are victims of abuse. And I know that in a group like this, there are many people who have had abuse. I want you to know that God loves you. That God really loves you. Jesus went to the cross, enduring not just the pain, but the shame. The shame of being completely exposed in a terrible way. He understands both pain and shame. And he came so that you would be healed. He came so that you would be healed. In thinking about this sermon, I became so much more aware of what this reality means and its destructive effect. The things that happen in sexual abuse and biases and things like that, how destructive it can be. And I want to tell you, I'll be praying for you. And I'll be praying for you more than I was praying for you before. And I hope also that you can find safe places among us within this church where you can find healing. Where you can find healing because Jesus went on that cross to connect with you and with your reality. and to tell you that He brings healing. He brings healing. Jesus loves you. You know, bottom line, for all of us, as we think about the issue of gender and relationships and abuse, is do everything with love. Not eros, which refers to, that sexual love and sexual attraction and lust, but an agape, the God kind of love, which seeks to do what is best on the other person. Always is thinking, do I understand that person and their needs, and therefore am I helping them? That was the first, by the way, that was the first memory verse that I gave you, isn't it? Can you remember it? First, has it been put up? 1 Corinthians 16:14, do everything with love. 1 Corinthians 16:14, do everything with love. Love operates on the basis of understanding. It responds with a desire to do what is good for the other person. There are some basic things that you can do as starting points for love. You just heard a great one from Jerry. Listen. Listen to those who are hurting. Listening validates other people. It validates the victims. Listening positively and receiving their stories. That big culture of silence that is all around us concerning this particular issue is built largely by hopelessness, by the fact that those who are weak feel there's nothing that can be done about it and they can never be understood. And if they can be listened to, it gives them dignity. If they never find sympathy, then, what's the point? But they find it there. Laurie Nichols, she wrote, no matter who it comes from, every story matters. I've been in the presence of people who have shared their deepest hurt for the first time. I've watched as tears cascaded down their faces, knowing that their untold story is no longer theirs alone. They have moved from the Western I to the biblical we. Because as in the Bible, we are always community, always supporting one another. And this is how it should be. That people can feel that they can talk. Simply put, she says, we reimagine what it means to be disciples of Christ, who seek the good and salvation and healing of all. The Bible also says, bear one another's burdens, which is a huge part of just that participating together. But it comes as we listen to one another. When we empathize, when we connect with people, it covers over those wounds and brings healing. So think about how you can keep the door open for people to talk, to complain, to bring their issues and to air them, whether it's in the workplace or with the relationships that you have. Are you able to go deep enough with people that are around you, that they would be willing to share a pain like this? I pray that we would all learn how to go that deep and that personal, because then we bring healing. Listening validates people. It validates people. Let's learn how to listen. Another thing is that we should defend those without strength to defend themselves. There are many people out there, and the reason why they're stuck is because they're just weak. They're in such a position of weakness. Can you be their advocate? Before God, perhaps with just prayers? Would you go beyond just praying for them to stepping forward and helping them in their part, in their situation of need? That's what God calls us to. That's what Jesus did. In our position of weakness, He came. And for those who were sinners, who knew their place was hell, He offered a place of life. For those who were hurting and knowing such pain, Jesus brought such complete healing. And that's what we are called to be. Do everything with love. Everything with love.